David's room, and it was later tested and determined to be heroin, MDA, and phenacetin, which is used as a cutting agent for street drugs. Oddly, his toxicology report was clean when David was obviously dealing with, or in, drugs. On the other hand, perhaps David was just not getting high on his own supply, preferring to bring in the cold, hard cash that comes with selling illegal drugs. The number of drugs and the packaging police found certainly supports this theory that David was selling drugs. Most damning was David's fingerprints, which were proven to be on the packaging of the drugs. Whether it was an act of utter premeditation, or perhaps utter dumb luck, David had reported the weapon stolen in 2016. It's possible that David obtained the firearm from his brother's room, or possession, after his brother suffered a drug overdose and was in a coma the year before. David was a known gang member, and while the fact alone proves no guilt on David's part, it helps show the environment that he constantly found himself in. There were multiple crime scenes that stretched for about 350 meters, or 1,148 feet. Several witnesses reported seeing David acting strangely about a half hour before he started shooting. Video surveillance later showed David pacing up and down a street near Danforth Avenue. Another clip depicted him just before the shooting outside the cafe, chain-smoking and glaring at people who were eating dinner. Those residents that lived on Danforth Avenue were told that they had to find somewhere else to sleep for the night, and they were being evacuated immediately. A variety of businesses were affected, including Skin Deep Tattoo, 7 Numbers Restaurant, Café Dimitri, Second Cup. There was a large number of shell casings found at Second Cup, which is a coffee shop in the area. In an act of brilliance, officers improvised items and placed them upside down to mark where shell casings were found. To recap, 2 people were killed. Murdered. 13 were injured, including 8 women and 7 men. Victim ages ranged from 17 to 59. 3 of the injured victims were required to have emergency life-saving surgery to save their lives.
I think, as I recall, I got the call shortly after 10:20 or 10:30. So Dr. Lawless was the primary trauma surgeon on call, and I got a text, are you around? Multiple GSWs, multiple gunshot wounds. And I answered, yeah, I'm at home, text me if you need me. 5 minutes later, or less than 5 minutes later, actually, the chief of critical care called me on my phone and said there's been a code orange at the hospital. So code orange means that there's a catastrophe in the city, there's a mass casualty or some other emergency in the city. And so it's all hands on deck. It means that nobody who's currently in the hospital can go home, even if their shift is over or whatever. That includes the porters. Everybody stays put. We call in backup teams from home. So I live about 10 minutes from the hospital, so I got into my scrubs and I drove into the hospital. And as I came down Shooter, I could see there was lots of ambulances and lots of police cars, and I had a sense then it was going to be a tough night and something catastrophic had happened in the city.
Police were shocked with how well David was able to handle his firearm. He managed to run around, aim, and fire with total precision. He could even switch magazines without pausing. Despite the obvious knowledge of firearms, it doesn't appear that David had any prior firearm training. He didn't have a license, and only seemed to go to work, the hospital, or the mosque with his father. The familiarity with guns was notable, particularly when he used tactical stances and on-the-move reloading maneuvers. Reese Charlotte Fallon was only 18 years old when she was killed. Born to parents Doug and Claudine at the Toronto East General Hospital, she entered this world on January 31, 2000, joining older sister Riley. She also had a younger sister, Quinn. Reese had just graduated from high school at Malvern Collegiate and planned to attend the McMaster University in 2018 to study nursing. A budding politician, Reese was a member of the Young Liberals, which is a youth political organization. She truly enjoyed her job at Loblaws supermarket and showed genuine care and friendship to her co-workers. Reese's small casket was covered with pink and purple flowers, a beautiful and colorful representation of the young lady who was taken far too soon. Those that loved Reese are working on getting a laneway in the upper beach named in her memory. 10-year-old Juliana Kozis was born on February 25, 2008. A stunning little girl, she had one brother. Juliana lived in Markham, which is located northeast of Toronto. She was a member of the Markham Synchro Club as a competitive synchronized swimmer, and was already into her 3rd year of being in the club and aspired to be a professional athlete. Described as a thoughtful, sweet little girl, Juliana was carefree and could frequently be seen by neighbors dancing outside on the front lawn without abandon. In her honor, flags were lowered to half-staff on Markham Civic Center. Juliana is buried at the St. Nicholas Greek Orthodox Cemetery. Understandably, her family has remained very private, and we truly hope they have been able to find some measure of peace. Partners Danielle, Kane, and Jerry Pinkson acted as heroes on that harrowing day. Danielle was a nursing student, and Jerry a nurse, and they were sitting on the restaurant patio enjoying a meal when someone told them that there was an active shooter, that they should go inside right away. Yet at that precise moment, they heard a server say there was a woman wounded on the sidewalk, and without hesitation, Jerry and Danielle decided to help her. The pair took only a few steps when Danielle caught sight of the shooter and recalled later that he looked so odd and strange. But before she had another moment to think, she was shot in the middle of her chest and fell straight to the ground, landing in the restaurant's doorway. Instinctively, Jerry pushed Danielle inside the restaurant, trying to shield her from further assault. Danielle immediately lost feeling in her legs, and she was bleeding profusely from the bullet wound that ripped through her stomach and part of her spine. Regrettably, Danielle remains paralyzed from the waist down, despite enduring 4 surgeries.
So I remember that we were dining on the patio of 7 Numbers when a server came out to inform us that there was a shooter in the area and that we should come inside. We were concerned and confused because, we thought, this can't happen here. A few minutes later, someone had rushed in to tell Jerry, tell people that there was an injured party outside. And Jerry thought, okay, well, I'm going to go out and help. And I thought I should go with him. And so he was a few steps ahead of me. And I had just taken 1, maybe 2 steps outside the side door. And across from me was, and he shot me immediately. And so I fell in the doorway of the restaurant, and yeah, I knew at that moment that I couldn't feel my legs, and I had a feeling that it might be a permanent injury.
We have an active shooter. We have an active shooter inside the warehouse. We have an active shooter. We have an active shooter inside the warehouse.
Danforth Avenue in Toronto, Canada is known as the Danforth. It's not so much a town as a neighborhood. The area is also commonly referred to as Greektown because it's the city's largest Greek community. In fact, many street signs in the neighborhood have Greek translations under the English names. As mentioned in the intro, locals were preparing for the upcoming Taste of the Danforth Festival, which is an annual event and also happens to be the largest street festival in Canada. The festival began in 1994 and has only grown in popularity over the years. It is typically held between the second weekend in August and goes on for 3 days. Taste of the Danforth is a non-profit organization that is run by a volunteer board of residents. Tasting tables are placed outside of local restaurants so attendees can try food from various places. The prices are kept to a reasonable minimum, so all attendees and locals have the opportunity to enjoy different restaurants and various types of food. In addition to the food, there are various activities for children, contests, sports, and entertainment. At the time of the shooting, David was living in a 2-bedroom apartment with his parents. They all lived together on the 7th floor in an apartment complex called Thorncliffe Park inside Toronto. David was working 2 jobs, both at grocery-type stores, where he stocked shelves and refrigerated foods. His co-workers reported that David was consistently a friendly and amiable guy. Including his twin brother, David was one of 4 children. He had a sister who passed away in a car accident several years before, although the research didn't produce the precise year. She was only 17 years old when she was killed after being ejected from a car that collided with a van. Tragedy struck again when one of his brothers overdosed on drugs about a year before the shooting. The brother was saved, although he was in a coma, remaining in a vegetative state. David and his mother visited his brother every single afternoon. The familial issues weren't limited to the children. David's father had serious health issues, suffering from a Parkinson's-like disorder. Given all of the turmoil going on around her, David's mother carried a heavy burden, which weighed on her greatly. One time at work, David had an odd incident where an employee noticed him spending an exorbitant amount of time staring at doors. The employee expressed concern, and David's supervisor referred him to counseling. Despite this one incident, there were no other concerns or incidents with coworkers that arose. On the other hand, about 3 weeks before the shooting, David talked with a friend, saying that he was concerned about his hours getting cut at work, that he would have to find another way to make money. Though he made this comment, the friend indicated that David didn't seem worried or overly concerned about the situation, so the friend didn't think any more of it until David committed his deplorable act. On May 14, 2010, when David was at school, he began cutting his face with a razor blade. He was detained under the Mental Health Act and transported to a hospital for treatment. According to the Canadian Mental Health Association, quote, "The Mental Health Act sets out the powers and obligations of psychiatric facilities in Ontario. It governs the admission process, the different categories of patient admission, as well as directive around assessment, care, and treatment. If a citizen behaves in an especially unusual manner, the Mental Health Act allows law enforcement to transport that person to a mental health hospital for evaluation and treatment. Further, though, law enforcement must feel that that person is a threat to themselves or others. If the treating doctor feels that the person is indeed a threat, and the person won't consent to treatment voluntarily, the doctor can hold them for up to 72 hours involuntarily for further assessment and treatment." On June 10, 2010, David was once again held under the Mental Health Act for his worrisome cutting with a pencil sharpener. He was again taken to a mental health hospital and treated, and apparently released. On June 16, 2010, David was apprehended at school after taking a steak knife from a teacher, saying he was the Joker. He refused to return the knife. Yet again, David was taken in for a mental health evaluation and treatment. This time he was diagnosed with an antisocial personality disorder. It seems things calmed down for a short time until February 15, 2012, when David called 911 from Leaside Park and reported he was suicidal. When first responders arrived, David was found with superficial cuts. Regardless, he was again admitted to the hospital for mental health treatment. 2 days before the shooting, on July 20, 2018, David was arrested at a local grocery store for stealing ice cream. It was a petty offense, so he was released without being charged. David did not excel or thrive in a school environment. Some don't do well with the structure or classes that are too large or too small, keeping up with students who are far advanced or staying focused when you are the advanced student. Our shooters we've covered here sat on all ends of the spectrum in this regard. In 2010, when he was 21, David graduated with his Ontario Secondary School diploma. Despite his success in obtaining the diploma, His record included notes that David had behavioral issues and poor verbal skills. An IEP, or Individualized Education Program,